says to me, he says, son, I said, yeah, Dad. If what you're doing isn't working, you do something else, son. Because only a fool keeps making the same mistakes over and over again. Son, I want you to go out here and make some new mistakes. I said, okay. Now, being 16 and 17, I was actually 17, I didn't really get it. Because a lot of us don't get it at 17. We just don't get it. You know, I hear you, I do speak the language, but I don't get it. You know, it takes a while to get it. You know? So when you're talking to your children, understand when you tell them the first time, they may not get it. You may have to show them, you may have to say it 2 or 3 times, you may have to kind of wait till it kind of incubates or marinates on their brain for a while, and eventually they'll get it. But don't raise your voice, because then they really won't get it. Then they'll never get it. So I said, okay, all right. So I got out the car, you know, he said, okay, go ahead. And he got me there late. He got me to the airport late, you know, and this is back when you could kind of run out on the tarmac. You know, I mean, you know, because when you didn't have to have a ticket to go right up to the plane. Some of you are old enough to kind of remember that. Now you can't even get past the gate, you know, without a ticket. No ticket? Nothing for you. Hold the plane, Joe, we got one more. It's my father saying. Okay, well, I said, and my parting words to my father were, well, Dad, one less mouth to feed. And I got on the plane. So I went through the Air Force, and the Air Force was okay, but it was back in 1962, you know, when there was a lot of civil unrest, you know, and I had never been out of the North, you know, I mean, you know, because although I was born in Newport News, my father was stationed here. My family left when I was 2, and so all I knew was Boston, you know. Now here I am, I'm going to San Antonio, Texas. You know, we had that speaker here from Arkansas, you know, and they were doing all kinds of funny things in Little Rock back then, you know. And so I was kind of skeptical about even going down there to Texas. You know, I was, well, Texas, man, I don't even know what they do down there. So I went through basic training. I came home for a little visit, and then I went to my duty station, which was up in Michigan, you know, and while I was there, I had 3 congressional investigations for racism, you know, because that's what my mother taught me. If things aren't going right, you write to somebody. That's what she taught me. I said, that's what I did, you know, so I had investigations for racism. So they didn't ask me to re-enlist like they did everybody else. Of course, I failed to mention that a couple of incidents happened between the time I got there and the time that they didn't invite me to come back. For instance, you know, I had a sit-in demonstration. I had a one-man sit-in demonstration. because the colonel, the colonel that was in charge was from, was a member of some like Freemason type thing. He was a Mason, and he was from New Orleans. And in New Orleans, I did my research. It was segregated. The Mason thing was segregated, you know. So I told him that, you know. And so what I did was I went over to the building, and he wouldn't see me. I sat on the floor with my legs across the hallway and dared anyone to step over my legs. They had to all walk around, all these officers, you know. They finally kept coming. I said, "Well, look, man, you know, you can't do anything for me because, you know, the person that told me that he's going to take my stripe and give it to a white boy, you know, is in the same organization that you're in, and it doesn't allow black people. So what are you going to do for me?" So that was my little sit-in demonstration. Then they put me in a snowplow, driving a snowplow, and I could drive a little bit. You know, I kind of learned when I was there, you know, but it was like these big rollover snowplows on the runway. And so I'm coming down the runway, and the guy said, "Okay, Earl, now here's what you do. You know, when you get ready to turn around, what I want you to do is a stomp on the brake and cut the wheel, and you'll spin around." I said, "Okay." So I did that, and I spun right into a bomber, a B-52H bomber. You know, so, you know, that's, oops. So from then on, they put me on on lawnmower detail. Of course, I screwed that up too, because I ran over a rock, and the rock, like you have those rider mowers, I ran over a rock, and the rock flew up and hit a general's windshield, broke it. So, I mean, it wasn't a good fit. It just wasn't a good fit. So now, I come home, and after being in the Air Force for 4 years, to find out that my parents are divorced. They didn't even tell me, I mean, I come home, what? Well, where do I live? Okay. So, I said, all right, I guess it happens, So my mother, she said to me, Chip, that was my nickname, take care of your father. What are you talking about? Okay, I'll take care of my father. Now my father still lived in the house that we grew up in, but my mother had moved out into another part of Boston called Brookline Village, and that's where she was living. So I'm going to school, and I signed up for a course at a school where I was studying aeronautical and space engineering. I said, okay, I'm going to be an astronaut. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an astronaut. You guys do what you want to do. I'm going to the moon. That's what I'm going to do. So anyway, things are going along pretty good. Again, I was the only black, but I was the class president, because I've always had kind of a way of, being able to kind of get along with people. I really didn't have a big problem with that. And so things were kind of going along pretty well, actually. And then one day, I had a feeling that my mother was in trouble. And I panicked, because it was a really strong feeling, And what happened was, my mother didn't go to work that day, and so she had called her job and said that she got hit by a car, brushed, and it was a white male that hit her. So I said, okay, so I ran to my mother's house, and I'm banging on the door, and I can't get in, and no one is answering the door, and all the neighbors are coming out, what are you doing? Oh, I'm looking at my mother, and so then I went somewhere else, and I came back, and I went to her job, actually, and I came back, and they said, they took your mother out of here, she died.
Wow.
She died. And she has been dead for 2 or 3 days. So she died from internal hemorrhaging. So it was on me to go to the city morgue in Boston to identify the body. Now, I'm scared to death. I'm scared. I'm angry. I'm mad. I'm upset. My mother had given me stories about how they had to put furniture against the door to keep the Ku Klux Klan out. And because she was light-skinned, you know what I'm talking about here, so don't anybody say, what's he talking about? She told me that in the South back then, they hated the racist whites. I mean, because not all whites are bad. Racist whites hate light-skinned blacks more than they do dark-skinned blacks, because light-skinned blacks can pass sometimes, and you would know what they are planning. I didn't even know that. So light-skinned blacks really had it bad, real bad, back then, at least where she was in Alabama. And so for me, my thought is, they finally got her. Finally got her. The white man finally got her. So as they're pulling the drawer out, the slab where my mother was laying, as soon as her hair was exposed, I said, stop! That's her. Because I didn't want to see her face. Because I didn't want to remember her like that. And you know, once you get the visual,
Yes, Lord.
once you, I don't care what it is, once you get the visual, it will be with you the rest of your life.
Yes.
But I could tell by the texture of her hair, you know, she had red hair, you know, that kind of, I don't know, kind of stringy type red hair, you know what I mean? And I was real upset. My mother, my father and brother and sister didn't know anything about this. So I told them about it. And so we told them about it, and we had the funeral, and we never cried. And we never talked about it. We do that a lot. Yes, we do. We don't cry, especially a man-child.
That's right.
Because it's not manly. We didn't cry. But then, the boy, I wanted to be a priest when I grew up. I wanted to be a priest. I mean, I didn't even get introduced to sex until I was like 19 years old. I mean, so I had a long time to think about being a priest. And then after that, it was just over. Maybe a minister. If I'm a priest, I can't do what? Oh no. Oh no. Should have got me beforehand, but it's too late now. So anyway, I went bonkers. I'm telling you the truth, I just went absolutely bonkers. I didn't know what to do with myself. I mean, I wanted to go on a rampage. But Satan, now I know you don't want to hear this, but I'm going to tell you anyhow. Satan took advantage of me and introduced me to a crowd of people that were thieves.